Look at us starting right at 10. Good morning. I was just saying, look at us starting right at 10 a.m. Listen, don't say there's CPT. We know how to get started right on time.
On a
Um,
good day. On a
on
good
a good
day.
day, on a good day, and all the other days too. Welcome to Sunday Safe Spaces. Um, this is April Jackson with Open Up Pittsburgh. I'm so happy to be with you on this sunny, wonderful morning. I'm here with my partner in all good things, right? I'm not even going to say good trouble, right? And John Lewis says, my partner in good trouble, Wesley Hamilton. How are you this morning, Wesley?
I'm great. Good morning, everybody. I'm over here, and you know what? It's sunny over here in LA right now too. So that's a surprise because it hasn't been sunny out here. So um, no, it feels good. It's a great morning.
Yeah.
I'm excited about this conversation today. Kind of shifting the gears on kind of what we've really been sharing over the last couple of months. So um, yeah,
I'm
you know.
so glad it's sunny. I've been teasing my family because you all know, like Wes and I've switched, and my family's where he is. But Los Angeles has turned into like Pittsburgh. It's been cloudy and rainy for almost a year, and Pittsburgh's been sunny. And we're excited to have someone who is based in Pittsburgh right now, Marcus Shoffner. Hi, Marcus. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Yeah, all is well. All is well and sunny. Yeah,
Yeah, right. I'm telling you, those rainy days make you appreciate a sunny blue sky, right?
no doubt about that.
And I'm really happy that we are talking about the weather, but the weather really influences our mental state. It
Mm.
influences our bodies. And we're here to talk a little bit about how nature influences us all. And I'm really excited. I was listening to Sean J. Moore. We did a little highlight. Wes has been posting stuff. We've been posting stuff. And it highlighted taking care of yourself and you give from your overflow. And I feel like today's talk and connecting with Marcus, and we want to hear everything that you do. But to me, it connects to how we fill ourselves up so that we can take care of ourselves and we give from our overflow. And we're talking about nature and accessibility, and Wes and I have been really excited about this conversation for like 2 months. So everyone, sit back, grab your water, your tea, your coffee, whatever you're drinking this morning, wherever you are. If you're listening at another time, because we're about to take this adventure outdoors, and we've all been doing some really well. Marcus and Wes primarily, but I have been, I take my hikes and go outdoors. So we want to, share life with you all. And that's why we invited Marcus here. So tell us about yourself, Marcus, and what you do and why we brought you here. And we're going to dive in.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to share this space with everyone. My name's Marcus. I'm going to give the whole background story of myself because I think it really runs into what I do professionally. But I'm originally from North Carolina. I lived majority of my childhood and young adulthood there. I grew up in Burlington, North Carolina, which is center of the state, and then was able to relocate for university, which was a real gift, to be honest. Was able to go to the westernmost part of the state and live in Asheville for a majority of what I call my young adult years, and that's what
Love
I
Asheville.
call as home. Like that's home and what's really meaningful to me because it's a space where I was able to explore and be curious, to be honest. And I think that's what's transformed my professional career at this moment is like being able to establish spaces, establish spaces where Black and Brown people can be curious outdoors. And I think that isn't taken lightly, and it's safeguarded in a lot of perspectives because our identities historically have been kind of targeted and marginalized in these spaces, but I hold it to great value. So I relocated to Pittsburgh in 2018 and kind of been hitting the road ever since. I was able to manage a lot of outdoor recreation projects throughout my time in Asheville to where I am now. And when I moved to Pittsburgh, I was managing an outdoor recreation trade show. So I was like traveling around, seeing different places, seeing how community was recreating, and really kind of taking all of that in and being an active participant in these spaces. But when I moved to Pittsburgh, I was like, there's a ton of resources here. You know, the Commonwealth is top five in GDP related to outdoor recreation in the industry. Has a ton of public land spaces, and when you think of the amenities in terms of water to full natural resources in the confluence of the three rivers, I was like, there's really no reason why there shouldn't be more of us out here. Just like everyone feeling a connection to place and space. But I couldn't really find a community that looked like me for being engaged in, but also just relaxing, to be honest. Like, I think it's really important to recreate with people that you feel comfortable with, but also just understand that it's a moment of solidarity, nourishment, encouragement, health and wellness. Like, there's a lot of things that come out of just connections with people and not being outdoors. Um, so I just found it and kind of took it upon myself to change that, you know, creating with community, which ultimately led to the Outdoor Inclusion Coalition, which is my professional job now, where I'm the president and CEO. And it's been a pleasure. Like, I feel like we're making a lot of progress in the city of Pittsburgh, but also the state of Pennsylvania to be intentional around the intersections of the outdoors. Like, to me, it's not just enough to consider that, like, we have equal access or equal investment from a community recreation and development perspective. I feel like we need to be involved throughout. It's a circular economy. Like, I should be a professional in this space. I should be thriving uh, in a health and wellness perspective, but also in an individual capitalistic perspective. Like, I should be paid just like my counterparts. I should be able to connect and see visions and pathways of creativity throughout. And we've been facilitating that space of intersectionality, which has been a lot of fun. We've had some drastic change and advocacy developments here, which I'm really proud to speak of. But that's that's me from like a 5,000 foot up. And like why I'm happy to be in this space, and I think the conversation will be very intentional around what we share and what we love, and how we can spread that to other people.
Oh, no, thank you for sharing. I mean, I really appreciate that. That's a lot of insight, but that's a lot of passion behind what you do. So appreciate the backstory. Um, yeah, before we dive in, April, you got something to say? Feel like you was ready to hit the jump.
I always have something to say, but there's just, one thing I did want to say is when you mentioned like black and brown faces, which, we're all shades of brown, right? From the palest of the pale to the, darkest of the dark. It's amazing how outdoor spaces, just space, is like air is free. Like, can we just all go outside and be free, in the sense that we cannot, and that there are limitations and barriers put on that because of ableism or racism or anything. It's just baffling. And so I'm really appreciating that you are being intentional about letting those spaces be free. And one thing that hit me is, in America, well, shoot. I mean, since the slave trade began, Europe, Africa, like, there became a time where it wasn't safe to be outside, and that's trauma, and so I think, us talking about this today is diving into that and taking steps towards working to heal that trauma. So that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, and I think just to tag team what you're saying too, and illuminate a lot of voices that historically have been marginalized in this space. I think the outdoors is perceived to be inherently free, but it comes with a cost. You know, you think of the Mon Valley and Clairton specifically as like going outside isn't just going outside. It comes at a cost of our natural health because we've been subjugated to these places specifically that environmentally are a detriment to us. You know, that's why environmental justice is so important in the spaces that we hold. Is I can go outside, but what does that mean in terms of my longevity and productivity as an individual? You know, the air quality is so bad, the natural resources that are in our natural space or in our environment or community have been degraded to a point where we can't utilize them just like our counterparts. So um, definitely to lift that up and highlight that, like there's a cost that I think we're all experiencing, and we need we need action and retribution to fix that. Like that needs to
Yeah.
occur.
Yeah, I think when at least from my own personal experience of growing up in Kansas City and going to different part, like I didn't go outdoors really till after my injury. um and I mean, I travel a lot now and I do a lot of things outdoors, and there are definitely a lot of challenges, but I get what you're saying when it comes to the environmental risk that you can face coming from certain places and communities too, and areas, because the air is a lot fresher in different places around the world. And and you could tell the air, the water. You find yourself becoming um, more in tune with different spaces. Like I always think about going to Oregon for the
Mm.
first time, and just I don't know, it was breathtaking. I don't know, Marcus. I think you're smiling right there. Like it was, Oregon was something different, and it was here. But then you go into access. Like I don't think I would have ever known what Oregon looked like if I didn't have the opportunity to go speak there. And then for me, I was able to share what Oregon looked like to a community of people that never knew or never thought that they could even be in Oregon if you haven't been brought up there, right? Like it was just the whole culture there was different that I wasn't aware of. And it made me think about people having access to that type of outdoors. What does it do for the mentality, and what does it do, when it comes to, like, because when you go out there in nature, like April said, like if you go into a good space, it does feel free.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So imagine just being there all the time and being surrounded, like compared to people that are just in the city and they're not going outdoors. So like kind of like how do you, thinking about that, Marcus, how do you feel, or what advice could you give individuals to find spaces within their city that can be, in a sense of freeing, that have been, like where do they search? And whether it's in Pittsburgh, like I know I can put some ideas from Kansas City when you're done, but if someone's trying to hear that and they need that experience before they kind of go to that adventure, where can they go in a community?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And that's a great question. And I think from a framing perspective, what my organization is trying to do is to be intentional on the dichotomy of what exploration and creativity outdoors looks like. For me, like this coalition that I managed was based off of my experience and the experience of so many others of like, historically, again, there hasn't been identity in space, and it could be diverse across multiple different representation pools. But um, the creativity that we can create and explore should start approximately in our own backyards, like in our own community parks, in our own neighborhoods. And that I would say ideology and shift doesn't have to be like everyone on the East Coast has to go to the West Coast. Like there's great spaces like here on the East Coast. And I try to tell people as like, go to New York and go to the Catskills. To me, that's like a beautiful space that holds near and dear to myself. And I could think of so many places in Pittsburgh, like Frick Environmental Center. That is like a beautiful space for me. And I think that it's a space that has connection to nature. If you're going to like bird, if you're going to mountain bike, if you're going to do a single trek hike, like there's a lot of different things that from a creativity and exploration perspective you can do here in the city of Pittsburgh. But I also think of the other places and parks that connect to my like original story as well, that have a jungle gym like a Westinghouse Park, or like swings that are fully inclusive. Like I think of all of those places that are at McKinley Park, or even in the Hill District, and historically Black and Brown communities that are like so beautiful. And I want to be able to share that and just encourage people that like you don't have to go super far away. There's beautiful places and spaces um, in Pittsburgh that you should be able to access, but also just continuing to advocate on behalf of there needs to be equal funding and distribution to be able to make my park just as beautiful as that park. And that shouldn't be cast aside or forgotten about because this is where creativity starts in our own backyards and it needs to be equally invested just like everyone else's park. And really, from an equitable standpoint, it needs to be even more because there's a gap and backlog of investment or just management that has let some parts be dilapidated or, again, just compared not as great as others. So just
Yeah.
conscious of all of that.
And that's like a higher level when you're talking about investment, in the politics. And we think of red zoning and other things. Because I'm thinking of Los Angeles and like my family, my uncle and my mom, aunts, they gardened, and they were in San Fernando Valley. Like and it was just all like rural country, and they gardened in order to like not just have fresh food, but to save money on buying groceries or whatnot. So like you could go in your backyard and start a garden or just put your feet in the dirt or, dig something up. And I know there's some trauma behind that because I've had some people are like, my ancestors had to pick cotton and they had to pick corn and they had to do this. I'm not going to do that. But when you do it for yourself, it is really healing. Um, and Wes, I see you going to the beach all the time. Like now you're there. Like just being able to, walk in grass and go to the beach and you know I taught in Inglewood or South Central LA, and I would take kids on field trips to the beach, which was a 20-minute drive down Manchester to get to, Westchester and Playa del Rey. There were kids who had never been on the bus and had taken that 20 or 30-minute drive to see the ocean and to put their feet in the sand. And
Yeah.
so and why? Maybe parents are working, maybe there's not enough time, maybe it doesn't feel safe, maybe it is an investment to take the bus, but invest, and make those opportunities available. And, you don't have to have a multi-million dollar apartment on the beach in order to have access to it.
Well, I think most people don't understand the level of like you said, there's such a trauma that has been developed, within Black and Brown communities when it comes to water, when it comes to like beaches, like, like I was just the other day, I was just thinking to myself, like, I used to just joke about not wanting to swim, and of course I swim now, but as I'm learning about generational trauma and things, I'm like, man, there's enough Black people that don't swim. There has to be a little bit more to this. And not all, I've never put this with slavery and going across the ocean, but there has to be a level of trauma. But double back to kind of what Marcus was saying, I just wanted to put emphasis on that with you, April. But I did some work with our Parks and Rec department in Kansas City, and the whole intention with the work was going and accessing and really looking at the parks on the east side of town and really trying to raise awareness on why they didn't get the amount of treatment that the parks on the west side of town was getting. And there was like going through this adventure because I'm trying to be vulnerable and start going to different parks. So we start at first we would do a east side park one week and then a west side park the next week. And then after a while, it became discouraging for me to be born and raised in a place that these parks was never even like presented to me. They were in communities, and of course they were community parks, but they were beautiful community parks. And then you would go back to the east side of town, and it wouldn't be nothing but like a ran down baseball field, or and no value, right? And so when you go and you look at the lack of the parks and the way that the investments are with the outdoor things that are there, again, thinking about the mentality, and then you see the mentality of the community out there, right? Like if there is not access to the things, like you said, like a jungle gym, like some places they're run down or they don't have it. And then what I learned through this process was that a lot of it goes into what the community knows about how they can be involved, at least in Kansas City. So it's like surveys, reaching out, doing things when the money and investments are coming. So instead of like the community knowing to make investments around parks and improvements. The other side of the community that's within that community was looking for security cameras to go at the parks and stuff like that to try to make them feel more safe. Instead of making the park become more improved so people can create a new mentality. So
Mhm.
my thing is like when you think about the investments and you see like the disconnect in parks, and then as April just referenced, there are individuals that are 20 minutes from a place where they can feel free, but then they feel confined within their community, right? Like how do we plant, that goes into access, right? Like, and so again, learning about your practices is great because as people hear about it, they get to know more and more how they can make things more inclusive. And um, so my thing is just like, what do we say? Of course, I know what I say to people all the time, like get outside, go to outdoors, do these things.
Right.
But for someone, say for instance, or I'll use example. Yesterday I was like, man, what parks in LA can I go to? Like I've been to some, but I've been here for a while. And so I think I Googled and it was like 24 parks. And I seen a couple that really like got me excited to go visit, and is that just what we advise people, to really just go and search and see what things are closer and near a nature center? Like what are ways where people can find things that help them go explore more, or resources that they can look at, or videos, right? Like, is there, we have a young generation on YouTube and Twitter and TikTok, if it's not banned in the state, right?
Right.
Yeah, just kind of thinking about that because I know like we try to make sure that we do address the issues, but I always try to provide some type of solutions.
Right.
Like for me, yeah. So it's just kind of like what do we say to people that understand that there is something 20 minutes away, but they never even thought they had access to it.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, for sure. I'm just writing down a lot of talking points. So this gets me.
Nice.
This is what gets me excited. Um, yeah, I think just to frame this appropriately and to show the value of parks, and I think what's been referenced so far is so powerful. I think parks, and this is my own like mindset. I think parks are the most valuable and humanistic component of recreation. It brings every aspect of an individual together, from a grandparent that's there to potentially watch their kid play a sport,
Mhm.
to the inclusive and like socially compativeness of like a space where you can just sit on a bench and see birds fly, or a space where you can walk around a track to get that health component. A well-designed park, I think, brings people together in the most basic sense, and I think that shouldn't be forgotten. And I think we all learned that during COVID. Even with being socially distanced, it's like this space is important, either from just being able to get out of the home to being able to interact with someone that's like 6 feet away. Like
Yeah.
you can't underrepresent what a park means to an individual and to a community. That's why I advocate so highly on the impact of, we need to advocate, we need to stand behind, and we also need to invest equitably in all of these spaces. So I don't want that to be forgotten, and I think that frames the rest of the conversation. I think, Wes, like what you said so far, I think there's a lot of creative younger individuals that are like showing parks in a really dope way, and I don't want I don't want to forget that. Like I follow on social media. I'll give him a shout out. Josh, you tripping? He
Follow him too. I need to see who this is.
oh, it's beautiful. He visits a lot of national parks, and I think that's been like one of their goals is to literally get a
And
shot
it's a black guy.
like in a national park, and it's so beautiful because it shows
yeah,
art culture outdoors,
yeah,
and it's unapologetic. And I think it's one of the most beautiful aspects of social media. It's like, be authentic in spaces, because that's what draws the next generation. That's what
yeah,
like helps you feel an approach and a connectiveness to an individual, but also to a place. And I think from an ancestral perspective, like when we go back and actually think of like who actually tended these spaces, I think that is a beautiful thing to be able to see Black and brown people in spaces, validating their experience and saying like, you should be here too, because this is what we have historically done. So I want to give a shout out there. But I think that creativity has been kind of at a high level, but also down to the most basic sense. I can think of so many people here in Pittsburgh that advocate or even just like share with their friends or activate their local park in a very creative sense. I think of like Pogo that done like a Wills in the Park, Wills and Wellness event that had like a fully inclusive experience in Westinghouse Park that, you know, brought Black and brown people and connected the aspect of like proximal parks in a very innovative way around like food, culture, identity, and just essentially advocating and supporting communities that love their space, but historically just again haven't had um, that level of connection or support around seeing their place and space in a creative fashion. So I think again, there's like a lot of people that are doing some creative stuff here in Pittsburgh. That's really awesome. And then thinking of one like this space, you know, like you're doing it as well, you know, like getting people together to share stories around what's meaningful is, I think, a very intrinsic and basic start, you know? Like if you ask me what was like my favorite park or like what means the most to me, I could talk to you for like 5 hours on that because it's like, yo, like this is what meant the most to me. And being able to see Black and brown people share their joy for the outdoors, I've seen just an immense amount of response around that. And I think it's really awesome. Um,
I'm so excited. I have chills. I'm just going to do a quick interrupt. I'm so excited because that's going to be one of our questions instead of, I mean, also with the book, like what has been your favorite experience? But just people are saying hi. They're happy to be here via LinkedIn. And also, and Marcus, I want you to finish. They just also said they love Josh, which I see he's from LA, it looks like. And they also said to check out Camping Noir.
Okay.
So I looked that up. Okay, go ahead, Marcus. Go ahead and finish.
I love this this constant feedback. Like this loop, just at any point interrupt me because I'm like, this just it brings more creativity to my mind and more talking points. I kind of set everything extremely enjoyable and positive up front, but just to bring this home of like, there is a moment when you're visiting a new space that like it's new to you. You don't know what to expect. Or, you know, currently at this moment, I think of historically like the Green Book and how people had a tool that was like, I know where I can and can't go as a Black and brown person.
And
I
can
know,
you share that with people? What the Green Book was?
yeah, yeah. So the Green Book was like a Black motorist book where essentially everyone was like cataloging where's the acceptable place for you to be a Black person in this region. Like, hey, I
In a
can stop for
safe
gas
space.
here. Yeah, like I can stop for gas here. Just that simple. But I think there's a few organizations that are trying to do that now. I mean, it's kind of crazy, honestly, that we're still in this time and space where we need a tool like this, but it's validating that individuals are creating a tool that could be digitally accessible for you to know, like, hey, this used to be a sundown. A sundown town. Let's understand that, and also be aware that, like, maybe in the past 5 years, there's been an incident that you should know of.
And that is so important. And for those who are watching, you're like, what is a sundown town? Well, there are towns across this national United States where Black folks knew don't be in there after the sun goes down because you would literally get lynched or you would get pulled over by a cop and beaten down or put in jail. And there's still places like that. And when I lived in Atlanta, I would go with my friends camping, or Tennessee, we go to Swanee. You know, I remember walking into a few times walking into a restaurant, everybody like stops and stares because I'd be the only Black person. We'd be the only Black family. You guys are all laughing because you know you've had those experiences, right?
Yeah,
You got
it's
to know when to be safe.
it's it still occurs. Like I don't want people to be blind to the fact that things like this still happen, unfortunately. It kind of like reminds me of I work with a colleague named Jerry Sibo James who created this amazing content and education series um, around monuments that are like on behalf of Black and Brown people, like the Emmett Till Monument. Like
Hmm.
that monument gets defaced at a higher rate than any other monument in the United States.
I
Like,
didn't realize that.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
still in the deep south. People go out there and take their guns and like shoot at the monument. Like the craziness and the trauma that occurs in that is absurd. But again, I say that to say like this still happens. Don't think that just
Yeah.
because we're in we're in 2023 that um,
But
yeah.
that's the part, right? Like that's the whole part when, of course people see, accessibility outdoors. The word accessibility can really trigger you to think, just thinking of maybe the disabled community. We have a lot of talks around disability as well as diverse conversations as well. But when you think about it, you think about the word access first before anything. And there are certain places that individuals that look like us don't feel comfortable or don't think we have access to. There's places that I've traveled to, there's places I've spoken to that I'm like, you know what? I don't even know why I'm in this town. Why am I by myself?
Hmm.
I'm in a hotel room. I'm nervous. That's just real things. I have a different aura about me. I come from a different place in life. And so for me, I know that my image speaks different, whether I'm in a wheelchair or not. And then that also adds layers. So, like, there's definitely been places to this day that I've been uncomfortable. And I've just tried to have, kind of suck it up a little bit and like, man, I'm gonna get through this and have to have that faith. And that's crazy to have that mindset sometimes, but it's real to know that like there are places, and you go, I'll use an example. I remember last year, I think I talked about me and April might have talked about I was down in like the South. I drove down south and I remember my GPS took me on the opposite highway than when I went down there. Like I knew a highway to get down from Kansas City to Louisiana, but then I went a different highway, and the highway, was full of plantations and all these different things that I had never even knew still existed. Like not so many on one highway. And if anybody's from down there, you know what I'm talking about. It's like so of course for me, again, I'm an adventurer. So I'm like, oh man, let me go. I see a plantation that's a bed and breakfast now. And I remember pulling up, I got a video because I thought that social media West is gonna be like, hey man, I just put into this plantation, da da da. But as I'm recording myself, I'm literally telling my audience, like, man, something telling me I shouldn't be here, right? And so I pulled out and left. Man, I'm telling you, I drove probably 8 hours straight on like a dark road. Like it was the most randomly a police cut the sirens on down this road. Like I was so nervous. I wasn't okay until I made it until I seen a gas station clerk that was black.
Hmm.
And that's when I pulled over and got gas. I was like, man, okay, I'm safe now because it definitely spoke. Don't stop here. Don't do nothing. And all I could think was, this is a highway that is connected to these sundown towns. And it was so dark. There was no lights. I mean, this was like a year ago, yeah. And I'm telling you, it made me think so much of, like you said, the history that's still embedded in the South and why some people, even from that location, don't get out, or the travel, the barriers when it comes to that. And then, of course, like me being in a wheelchair, right, and having a disability doesn't make me feel more comfortable to go explore these spaces because now I have a limitation that is perceived as something on top of this, right? And
Right.
so when you have people that have that thought process, it creates barriers. So I just wanted to share that story because even though people see Wes and I'm always traveling, I travel alone a lot of times, and I get to I'm I get to feel what most people don't want to feel. When I go into these spaces, and I feel the way people see me, right? Because I'm a new face in this space that nobody ever thought you probably knew about.
Hmm.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Wes. And
Thank
I,
you.
I definitely feel the same way as you. Like, surprisingly enough, people think that just because we have a little notoriety or we're an organization doing the work that we're immune to being black.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
like we we live this every day. You know, like it's unfortunate that we have to battle through this and push through this, but like just because
Yeah.
I have, so many followers on Instagram or I'm a president and CEO of an organization, when I go outside, it's inherently wild, just like everyone else. Just like
Hmm.
every other black and brown person, it is inherently wild. So I don't forget that. I don't take that lightly.
Mm.
But I can also say that that's what pushes me to advocate even further of like, oh,
Yeah.
I experienced this. Like, let me make sure my future son, my future daughter never has to experience this. And that's what motivates me at this moment and has been a motivating factor for me is like, I love these spaces just like all my other counterparts.
Hmm.
I don't get that same push. I don't get that same validation. I don't get my experience lifted just like everyone else, but
Yeah.
we'll change that.
Yeah.
How do you educate people? Because I know, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, like part of some of what you've done is like you'll get a van and grab kids after school and take them to the local.
So, not
You'll
yeah.
pick them up voluntarily because they want to go. Get in this van. We're going to the mountains.
I'll clean that up.
I know. Watch how I say that.
It's all love. I'm just
How do
kidding.
you guys educate? Because I'm thinking there's so many things that you need to educate people on. One, accessibility, right? Like these are the places you can go, these are the places you can access, this is wheelchair friendly, this is sight impaired friendly, all those things. And also like this is safe and comfortable for you. And then there are other things like insect repellent, like things you just need to know, like these are the proper kind of hiking shoes, or this is kind of outdoor gear. Like, do you have an element of education that you provide to people that you engage with before you take them outdoors, or are you just entrenched like let's learn while we're here?
Yeah, yeah. I'll speak to all of that. To be honest, like what my organization does, one, and I say literally 15 to 20% of our organizational mission is to make sure that individuals have accessibility to programs that are barrier free, and we mean that in every sense, like transportation, clothing, education. Uh, Whatever you need, even if it's like getting to a destination point for us to pick you up, we cover that type of work.
Mhm.
And it's sustainable. We're not saying like, hey, this is your first time out and it'll be your last. No, it's like, this is your first time and it's going to be, one of 500 with us until you feel like, hey, I want to do this with someone else, or like, I don't know, you feel more comfortable to explore on your own, whatever that may be. We just leave it in the end user's hands. So programmatically, we do two things, and I think we're a bit creative in this space. And I share this because, like, I don't want to be the only one doing this, but um, we had a ski and snowboard program, which skiing has been a passion of mine. Again, just another sport that's like extremely expensive to start up. Um, Hills have been historically one of the most exclusive spaces, especially for the archetype of individual that recreates in that fashion. So this year, we created a ski program and snowboard program where 30 students from the Hill District in Homewood participated with us over 7 weeks. Again, directly related to our model of like everything's covered, everything's free. But our intention was to create a space uh, literally from August of 2022 to now, where we're facilitating constant conversations with partners, a resort, the community, to be able to kind of field and establish comfort of us being in this space. Like I've been skiing at Seven Springs for a very long time now, and I can tell you on one hand how many black and brown people I've interacted with. I ski at least 35 days a year, which is like a lot. One hand how many times I've seen, aside from my program, black and brown people that look like me on the hill. So we're not just introducing students and families to a space and saying like, everything's going to be great. We're going to have the greatest time. It's like, we're going to collectively establish a space within a structure and co-educate off of that. Like, as a resort manager, you need to know that some of the music that you play that's in the public while we're skiing is not cool.
Right.
When we're in locker rooms and people decide to do stuff, that's not cool. Like, you got to handle that. When you have mascots that come out and they're dressed like this, that's not cool. So it's a co-education model to let people know that, like, we've been here for 5 sessions, we'll come back for 15 more, and
Right.
we expect change, and we're collaboratively working on that in partnership. I think it's a mutual accountability measure that, again, opens up more doors and has more intentionality, because the thing that I've learned the most is, like, organizations can't take this on alone, and they
Right.
need a partner that's able to, like, stand beside and say, like, hey, there's accountability here. But once that partner leaves, 90% of the time, it's not going to be lifted back up again. I'm here for the long haul, because I want my community, my students, to know that, like, someone's sticking up for them, or their voice is being heard and translated into a structure and a space, to make sure that 10 years from now, again, when they have a child or someone that's meaningful to them that they want to share an experience with, you don't need me.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that, because
Yeah.
I want to also share, like, the stereotypes and the buckets we put people in, like, oh, all Black people can't swim. Like, that's a crock of
Yeah.
that's BS. Like, and my own child, like, had a coach turn to him and, like, do you swim? And I was like, why would you even act, like, this kid's been on a swim team. Like,
Mm.
why would you turn to the only one of two Black kids on the team and ask him that? Like, he's a dynamic swimmer.
Mm.
And or I remember somebody saying to me, like, oh my God, April, you snowboard? I'm like, yes, but I don't have to wear it on my shirt. Like, yeah, I do need and part of it is, like, we're not a monolith. We do all type of things, right? I see Wes up on the hills rolling around. Marcus, you snowboarding to 35 or skiing. I don't know if you snowboard too. And there is a little separation between the two.
There is a little bit.
But this idea too, like, if we don't feel safe and comfortable, I'm not going to keep going to some place if they're playing racist music, or people going to are keep they're going to keep making a side comment to me. And
Yeah.
and there's something here that somebody spoke to, Wes, when you were sharing about being in the South. Viewers mentioned seeing Confederate flags
Uh-huh.
at campgrounds, and they're like, I know not to pull up in there. I'm not going to park my RV and camp my tent in this Confederate flag park, because I'm
Yeah.
not welcome. So I appreciate you, Marcus, saying, like, you also do co-education, not just with the communities that you go into, but with the communities that run these resorts and
Mhm.
whatnot. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to, like, speak to the camping piece, because I think that's we're
Oh.
working on that here as well, just so everyone's aware of that. Like, my
That's
org,
why I was gonna highlight that. I was gonna ask you about camping, because I'm one of them types that I'm not, I didn't go to Coachella because of camping. I'm like, they're like, oh man, you want to come? We're gonna have this. I'm like, nah, I don't know about camping yet, man.
oh, I love it. I
I
can
do
say
too.
I love that. Again, like, the younger generation, yeah, and I would say even, like, my age group, like, we're being ultra creative in the ways in envisioning the future of outdoors, and I don't want that to be missed either. Like, there's a lot of just icons in this space that look like us, that are setting the path forward, where, like, camping isn't this self exploration moment that it used to be with, like, John Muir, or, like, again, that archetype earlier, where it's like, no, I need to go in the backcountry, be alone. Like, I don't take anything but a hatchet, and, like, I'm building this structure. It's like, that's cool, like, in the 50s, but it doesn't have to be that way. Like, we can create something ultra creative and have that same experience of connection to an environment without feeling as if, like, I'm at a deficit. Like, I have to go out here and figure it out. Like, no, you don't have to do that. So I can say, in Pittsburgh, and what we're really happy and, like, proud about, and again, just, like, kicking game, like, sharing knowledge with the hopes that, like, someone takes this and does the same thing somewhere else. Um, we created an urban camping program. So since Yeah, since about 2019, we have been advocating at the city to change municipal code to allow for an urban camping designation uh, in our regional parks, which has been a journey. But in May of 2022, we got that legislation passed, so we can make this happen. So what that looks like is the city of Pittsburgh will define a permit process where essentially organizations like my own or youth and family serving organizations can uh, essentially create that proximal experience that's in an urban setting. A good example is like Riverview Park, which will be our pilot location for this year. It's about a 240-acre park, so it's a very large park. It feels as if you're in the backcountry, but I always tell people if I forgot the ketchup, I can go home and get it. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
if I need to take a bus to get to it, I can do that. But the intention there is for organizations like the Outdoor Inclusion Coalition to provide 100% barrier-free experiences. So, like again, 100% coverage for gear. So, similar to skiing, like camping is a very expensive activity. You know, a tent could be $50. It could be 560. You know, the range is very wide, but we provide all of that gear 100% free, and then we're educating you on proximal based camping experiences. So, like, what does it look like to pitch a tent in Riverview Park? What does it look like to manage a fire? What does it look like to have, 20 students outside camping and you like trying to figure out what activities you can do in the park? Like, we educate on that and camp with you and offer support to make sure that you feel comfortable. Because again, everything goes back to creating curiosity, feeding that curiosity, but also facilitating a greater importance for exploration. Because like
This is so good.
what I literally live by this. What starts in the backyard is just a microcosm of your future. Like if you have a great experience in a spot that is well managed, and you again, if it rains, you can pack things up and go home. Like there's no reason you have to push the limits on your first experience to be like,
Yeah.
oh, I braved through it. Like that's a beautiful story, I guess, 20 years from now. But for me, it's like, yo, I just had a cool time with my family. You know, like I didn't have to brave an
Yeah.
experience. It was just a settling, relaxing experience. So
It starts in the backyard, and
yeah,
that's why I have a fire pit in my backyard, and we try to camp. Marcus, Wes is about to say something, but Wes and I would like to go camping, and
let's
so
do it.
plan that for us.
Yeah, if you want to go, literally, we'll be up and running this year. So if you
Yeah.
want to come down here this year and
Yeah.
camp with us at Riverview Park, let's make it happen.
Just hold the rain, man. Cause last time I came, man, we got
Oh
soaked
my God.
wet. So you know what I mean? Like I'm good with rain, but me and April, man, I mean, it was
It wasn't just rain, Marcus. It was a torrential downpour, storm, street signs flying, like no exaggeration.
it was crazy. So yeah, but no, I definitely would be willing. And I like and that I feel like that was the approach I did with our Parks and Rec department was being able to go and share and say, hey, this is what can bring value to this group. This is what can help. So like that education piece, like again, like going in and saying like, okay, this is how we can make things better. Seeing our faces in these spaces make people become more aware. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of like me. I'm like, let me be a vessel and go into this space and let them know we belong here too. You know what I mean? And we probably was here before, but we got to come back. And so it's stuff like that. So I think that that's very important. And I love like the camping initiative because outside of just all these other reasons why people don't get out, the other thing of like sleeping in a tent or being outdoors where you might not, it's that safety measure and then learning that or feeling comfortable. Um, yeah, I think that's important for any group, right? So, um, no, that excites me. It makes me think about like my non like disabled but not really in the work we do. And our goal is always trying to get individuals outdoors in any capacity. But, the know-how of like, I don't know, what does travel look like? Like I went to Canada last October and did some work with Destination Canada. So I actually did. I didn't ski. It wasn't time for the slopes, but if it was, I probably would have did it. But I did mountain biking in the forest and stuff out in Whistler.
Hmm.
And so we're trying to work together right now and try to figure out how we can create a program to get individuals out there to learn about their adaptive sports program, because they do all these different things. And I mean, at least for me, it was great. But again, just like you, I didn't see, black faces or brown faces really. But at the same time, that community and culture was welcoming, and so it made me want to say, okay, these are places where, you might not see a lot of people that look like you, but everybody doesn't have this mentality that you don't belong either.
Right.
So you gotta to understand where you are going or learn about where you're going, because there has been people that probably, Mark has probably been somewhere, shared his experience. He might have been the only person there, but his experience was so fun that if you hear about it, you're comfortable enough to go there too. You know what I mean? And so, like, letting people know that, because I've been like, I went to Niagara Falls one time and I was by myself, and I didn't see a lot of black people out there, right? Like, I was on the Canadian side too, but at the same time, I mean, it was breathtaking. It was cool. I seen all these other cultures that it was something for me to learn, right? Like, I seen all these different things, so you can go places and actually learn for yourself and learn more about life and educate yourself about different cultures and see what they're doing. It's sometimes it plants the seed for you to say, dang, look at all these other people exploring. Like, let me go grab my family. I know driving down a highway in Oregon, I remember hitting a U-turn and said I couldn't explore it no more because my mom, my daughter, my brother, and my sister need to be there with me. Like, I remember that was just in my heart to say, nope, I don't even want to see this no more, because it was so beautiful, man, that I just was like,
Want
I
to bring
seen enough.
everybody.
Everybody else got to come see it. So sometimes it do be us that need to go and really, and plant that seed. So just letting people know that too. And that's what I think Marcus is doing, is literally allowing that ripple effect to happen, plant the seed and the younger ones or the more courageous ones. And now you've got your older generations following you along. So
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a question from a viewer, and then we're gonna wrap up. Uh, and we're gonna have to do this again because this whole conversation went so fast, and it's amazing. So we're excited. A question from a viewer: how to get parks and recreation or government departments to care about representation?
that's a good one.
You want to start, Wes, and then I can
Yeah.
wrap up? Or...
Honestly, that's a very good point. I think learning about how far they have went with when it comes to diversity and inclusion is important. And then a lot of parks and recreation have boards. So figuring out how you can be a part of the board or the advisory board or even providing insight. There are a lot of meetings that happen that the community just don't know about. There are surveys that happen for your community that, again, a lot of it's on the Parks and Rec Department's websites. That's what I've learned.
Mhm.
We just don't know about those resources because we don't go. Going there, providing your insight, being very intentional about like what you want to see is a great way to start, allowing them to know your name, and then even going into the door, because there's a lot of people that might represent what you represent that work in that facility, but you don't see it on the outside. You know what I mean? And so sometimes going into the facility and figuring out who you can actually talk to, because you see that there's a disconnect in representation. Because that's how I feel like I had to do it. It was kind of like it was a conversation, but if I didn't take initiative, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, and for this, I can only speak from like my experience, and I think you're speaking with two people that are a living case study. Like we've done this. Um, the organization that I manage, I put so much power in that space because from my thought process, there's power in numbers, especially when there's individuals that are coming together over a shared focus and intentionality. Like I think diversity to me is not enough. You know, the inclusion is not enough. Like you need all of these things, especially when we're speaking here in Pittsburgh. Like environmental justice and all of these things need to be wrapped up as well. So just to talk about pure breadth, like there's 168 organizational partners in the Outdoor Inclusion Coalition. So like when you have a group of people that are willing to sign a letter or speak with a governmental agency on your behalf of a larger entity, but also being intentional around leverage points of allyship. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think it doesn't go without saying sometimes the messenger just isn't the correct messenger, but also the message getting across is more validated than not sharing it in the first place. So I think we need to be able to balance all of those things. So uh, just to kind of boil it down, I think just understanding what your message or your intention is going to be, signing up for it and being intentional. Like, again, you can't just say that we want DEI at a governmental agency and not being able to push the accountability measure or say like we want this but not hold anyone uncomfortable. Like there's going to be uncomfortable moments and you have to be able to step in and facilitate that. But also just staying consistent. I think you have an agenda, you want to get to it. Now there's going to be deviations or adjustments and changes. You need to work towards what you said you're bringing to the community or advocating on behalf of. So I'm just going to keep that really quick because I think I think
Yeah.
partnership with a governmental agency is sometimes tricky, um,
Right.
but it has to be done. You can't make change just in one environment or one space and think that it's going to change how people in Pittsburgh recreate. Like you really need to be able to change laws or ordinances or something that you see as a glaring weakness that's causing that barrier or that wall to be able to facilitate greater change and engagement in environment. So,
I think the quote. I think the quote I hear a lot in that is like, "Be the change we wish to see in the world," and like literally have to step up front. But like you said, there's a lot of work to be done. It's just you just can't go into the surface. A lot of things are in depth, and it starts with the laws, or just being an advocate, and being able to raise awareness. So all of that gets people's attention. Right now, when there's no noise happening, they just doing their job, going home. But
yeah,
That's
when the
true.
noise happens, you give them something to work on.
The squeaky wheel gets the oil. That's right. We've shared so much richness today, and we're planning a camping trip in Pittsburgh.
No,
Marcus, we want to take you to LA. One of my favorite camping trips when you were talking about doing that camping trip in the local park. This was through the school district when I was in middle school, but Camp Hollywood Land, which is right by the Hollywood Hills sign.
oh,
There's a
cool.
huge campground. Wes, I don't know if you know that. There's a huge campground up there and you feel like you said, Marcus, like you're in a whole like 300-mile away area and it's right there in the city. So I look forward to us exploring and doing all these things and just enriching ourselves and enriching others. And I want to ask, like we shared some podcasts already, or podcasts and Instagrams. I already put them in our newsletters. Josh, you tripping? Camping Noir. There's a woman on TikTok. She's a sister who cooks in the woods. I can't
Awesome.
remember her name, but I'll have to find that. But what have you been doing for the past year that reflects what we're talking about? Like, what are your outdoor adventures that you would like to share with the community, just to show like you're walking the walk?
Oh yeah, wow. There's so much here. I do want to give a shout out to Camp Yoshi as well. That's another Instagram social follow that you should have. Again, another black and brown brother that's cooking similar in the open space, which I think is beautiful. He also facilitates multi-day trips if that's something that you just want to find a space that's led by a person of color that you get that home cooking feel. So shout out to Camp Yoshi. For me, what I'm doing to kind of walk the walk, I mean, facilitating these trips that I've kind of spoken about, the camping and skiing and snowboarding trips are so beautiful to me. And I think it goes beyond just that, hey, my organization is doing something really cool. I think it's been impactful to me to see black and brown joy in the most basic sense. And I think that's beautiful.
Mm,
And it's sometimes tough to like facilitate a program or lead an organization that really you're investing your entire soul and love into. But to be able to see this outcome on a weekly basis is just what fills my cup. So I want to give a shout out to that. Like everyone that's participated in the Outdoor Inclusion Coalition as a program participant and has spent time with me and has like gain connection and just vulnerability between our experience. I greatly appreciate that. That's been a beautiful experience that's humbled me in the most basic sense. So aside from that, I will say the thing that's like most exciting for me at the moment is similar. Like we're creating a podcast, me and my brother. It's a video production called Sincerely Yours Outdoors, and I think the reason why we have created this, it aligns clearly with the organization that I manage, but we've spoken about it here, is being able to share black and brown stories and validate the fact that like we've been doing this, whatever it is outdoors, we've been doing it for the longest of time. And either we haven't got the notoriety or we haven't been able to share our authentic story in the fashion that we want to share it in. Like there's a lot of interviews that are out in this space related to our experience of like, oh, well, just tell me how you got connected to blank. While that's important, I think what's more important is actually sharing like what do you actually feel when you're in this space as a black and brown person, and how have you been able to gain that connection to place and space that historically has been either considered a deficit or you haven't been like actually represented in these spaces. I think those are the moments that again open the door for the next generation to say like create whatever you want out here, like do what you want out here, feel how you want to out here, and explore in the fashion that best fits your interests. So we're doing that. We're going to be creating, well, we're already creating, but we'll be having some content roll out in May, which we're really excited about. Again, just like traveling to see people where they are, and turning the interview over to the interviewee. Like, this is your experience. We do
Yeah.
literally like video productions that are at a spot that means the most to the interviewee. We do an interview that's based off of a run of show that like the actual interviewee is like scripting the questions. We're just again that vessel that's actually prompting the conversation. So we're really excited about that because I think it loops together all the conversation we've had this far. So, and then there's a ton of other things. Like I'm doing a lot of like personal trips that I'm really excited about this year. That I'm like, ooh, I can't wait until December to share what I got. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. And for those who may have known or not have known, I purposely didn't say anything about his brother. But Derek has been on before because he came on when we had that running podcast. He's a big runner, and I love the Shoffner brothers. I drag you guys along with me in CrossFit and other stuff, and so
No
it's
dragging, you let us. Don't worry.
I led you right. So I'm excited, and we're going to share all that you do with in our newsletter. You all check out our newsletter, but Outdoor Inclusion Coalition will be there. All the podcasts or the Instagram and social media that you all have shared today, we'll put in there. Wes, you want to share some of your outdoor adventures that you do keep you sane?
No, I just like Marcus said, just get outdoors. Of course, I'm out here in LA, so I go to the beach a lot. I just like going and watching the sunset. I don't know, it just does something for me. I think that's just my best time to go, the golden hour, go out there, and just watch the sunset. It's something about hearing the ocean sounds, water. And a lot of times I always go with intention to like, oh, write or read and then I get out there and I just sit and I just, and I just relax and I find time in solitude. And of course, like, travel. I do encourage people to travel. Being paralyzed 11 years and I travel alone everywhere I go. And that's intentional. So, I went to Amsterdam, went to Canada, like I went to all these different places alone. And even though it had barriers and challenges, I still went and I go back, because I have took that time to go. And so, outside of just finding peace and solitude, and of course, parks, everything around the corner is always good. Just going out, like again, like Marcus said, I'm in my power chair a lot when I'm out here in LA. And every day, if you all follow me on Instagram or something, I say daily stroll. I get in a power chair and I roll around a couple blocks. I just go to a gas station. I done made friends with people. Like And that's just what I do every day, just to get outside and be, just soak in the community. You learn a lot about your surroundings when you get outside. And so sometimes we're confined in our homes, and we should just get outside because we can learn more about people, good people too, that, could be helpful, or just a great conversation when you need it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. And I'll close it up. I do the same. I'll just go outside. They give it a term, they call it grounding. But I used to just like to run around barefoot when I was a kid anyway. And I'll let the dog out and just go stand in the grass barefoot. I'll walk up the hill to my neighbors. We'll talk. I built a fire pit a few years ago, I think even before the pandemic. I love a good fire pit, and it brings, community together, fellowship together. The neighbors will come, the kids will bring their friends, and find a partner of friends. Like Wes rolls around all the time, like he's just out in these streets rolling around. And I have accountability partners. I have a girlfriend group of 4 of us. We go hiking. I'm right up the street, Marcus, from Boyce Mayview, and it's amazing because it's always an adventure. It's a 5-minute drive. I could even walk up there, but it's close to home. And it's beautiful to start, as Marcus said, in your own backyard, and then that experience could expand you. Take care of the environment, everyone. Throw the plastics, recycle them if you can. Know that climate change is happening. That's why LA is raining like crazy, and we hardly got any snow in Pittsburgh. And I don't think Kansas City got a lot of snow this year compared to what's usual. But it all connects, and it all connects to us filling our cup. So Marcus, thank you. You'll be back, I hope.
Yeah, whenever you want me.
Yeah, we're going to want you. And check out Marcus's site. Check out Wesley. I think I put a link, but I'll put a link again when he did that Outdoor Canada. And that was dope. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It was a dope experience.
all
So
right,
thanks
let's make a
everybody.
pact. When we come back together, we will have traveled some more and had some more outdoor experiences that we can share with everyone.
No doubt.
Absolutely.
All right. All right, everyone. Thank you. We're gonna sign off, but we're gonna